It was on 26 November 1949, the Constitution of India, the new Constitution was adopted. And this Constitution, when it was adopted, every one of us should know that a lot of groundwork has gone into it. When I speak about the groundwork, the Cabinet Mission of the Government of the State of Great Britain had provided for the establishment of a constitution, a new constitution for the State of India. And a new constitution naturally had to be drafted by eminent experts. And with the result, for the first time, on 9th December 1946, in accordance with the British plan, they elected the Constituent Assembly. And when the Constituent Assembly was elected, Dr. Sachidananda Sinha became the provisional president of the Constituent Assembly. And on 11th December 1949, they elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the permanent president of the Constituent Assembly, and then elected Mr. Mukherjee as the vice president. Along with Mr. Mukherjee as the vice president, they appointed a constitutional advisor. And this constitutional advisor was none but B.N. Rao, Benegal Narsingha Rao. Now thereafterwards, a lot of developments have taken place, and the committees, all the committees were appointed. There were as many as 13 committees were appointed under the Constituent Assembly, and these 13 committees were requested to take charge of several issues relating to the development of the Constitution, a new and independent Constitution for the State of India. Although the Constitution drafting is a very tedious process, it took almost 2 years and 11 months, and on completion, the Constitution of India was adopted. Now, when I speak about the Constitution of India, there are several Constituent Assembly of the State of India. There were several people who have contributed for the adoption of the Constitution of India. Now naturally, everyone knows that the first name which comes into our memory is Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. Bhimrao Ambedkar was elected as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution, future Constitution of India. As the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution of India, his role was stupendous, and it was he who was able to, remember, ultimately finish and give us the Constitution of India. Now you might be knowing Balasaheb Ambedkar happened to be a great learned scholar. He was not only a learned scholar, he was a jurist, and he was a top-class economist as well. When I speak of Dr. Ambedkar, he had 2 degrees, 2 doctoral degrees, one from the University of Columbia and the other one was from the University of London. And in addition, he was a member of the Gray's Inn, and he became the first law minister of the independent Indian first elected government of the State of India. That is where we always remember, and the contribution which was made by him is immense. On this day, we have to remember a few of the great scholars who were behind the curtain. And these scholars who were behind the curtain were responsible in playing a very crucial role in independent India, in the independence of India and its formation, and helping in every possible manner for the adoption of a new constitution. Now there are 2 such people. There are plenty of others I can mention. When we speak about the national leaders, we naturally speak of Mahatma Gandhi. And then we speak of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Then we speak of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And along with these, there are plenty of Patabi Sitaramaiah was one such person. Then another Acharya Kripalani was another person. Vishnu Kamath was another person. Now there are plenty of Meenu Masani, host of them, over 200 of them, remember, sacrificed to get independence for this country. And when we got independence, all of them were part of the constitution making as well. Now when we take up 2 important leaders, one happened to be Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer. Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer was born in the year 1883. and he was a student of the Christian College, Madras, and a student, brilliant student of the University of Madras. He opted law and became a lawyer, and afterwards, remember, one of the leading practitioners. From 1927 to 1944, he was the Advocate General of the British Presidency of the state of Madras. That itself speaks about the grit of the man. And when the constitutional committees were formed, Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer was taken in 9 committees, and his scholarship, his knowledge is recognized and applauded even by Dr. Ambedkar as well. Now another important person happened to be Benegal Narasimha Rao. Now Benegal Narasimha Rao, remember, came from a family of Chitpavan Brahmins from Mangalore. He had 3 brothers, Benegal Narasimha Rao, and younger brother Rama Rao, and other one Benegal Shama Rao. All of them were eminent men. When I speak about this, the contribution which is being made at the childhood and other contributions, let me start with this childhood. Benegal Narasimha Rao was a brilliant student, and his parents' father was a well-known doctor. He was born in the year 1887. Thereafterwards, goes to the University of Madras as a student, and he was first in literature, in mathematics, in Sanskrit, and in physics. That is how, with the first class with distinction, he came out from the Madras University. As and when he came out of the university, the Government of India scholarship he got, he goes to the University of Cambridge. Having gone there, he becomes a member of the Gray's Inn, then gets a degree, and in the year 1905, he passes, he took into the education and completed it, and in 1909, he passed the Indian Civil Service examination. On passing the Indian Civil Service examination, he was posted to the Bengal Presidency. And in the Bengal Presidency, he was appointed as an officer. Then later, he was taken into the judicial post as well. In those days, most of the civil servants were simultaneously not only civil servants, but they were given judicial positions as well. And he becomes a district judge. Now, by knowing his ability, by knowing his scholarship, by knowing his administrative talent, the eastern province of Bengal had taken him, and he becomes the Secretary General of the Legislative Council of the eastern province of Bengal. There he served for a period of 8 years, and he becomes an advisor, a legal advisor to the Legislative Council as well. This was the contribution in the initial stages. Thereafterwards, the gentleman was appointed in several positions in Delhi. Now he was appointed as the commissioner, chief commissioner, or the chairman of the commission, which is known as the Indus Commission. There were several water disputes, especially related to the river Sindh, and the Raja of Bikaner and the other Rajas, especially in the north, local Rajas always had a fight in sharing the waters, the tributaries of the river Sindh. Now, at that time, the British government, realizing the gravity of the situation and the pulse of the problem in sharing the river waters, appointed Mr. B.N. Rao, Benegal Narasimha Rao, as the chairman of the commission. And the report which was submitted has been hailed as one of the best reports ever written on a dispute of this kind. It became a model at a later stage for almost all the states under independent India. Then thereafter, in 1944, he retired from the civil service. And the moment when he was retired from the civil service, he was appointed as the Prime Minister of the Jammu and Kashmir. But then he survived as the Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir only for a while, because he had developed some differences with the Maharaja, the then Maharaja. because he was not prepared to accept whatever the Maharajas had indicated or asked him to do. With the result, he submitted his resignation and he came back to Delhi. When he came back to Delhi, the Governor General of India has appointed in his office as advisor for purpose of constitutional reforms. It is where he gets the first grip of making the constitution along with Dr. Ambedkar. When we speak of this man there afterwards, when the Constitutional Committee was appointed, or what we call as the Constitutional Assembly was appointed, he was appointed as the advisor. As the advisor, he had prepared several notes, and these notes which were prepared by him were circulated with all the other members as well in advance. For instance, I just intend to make a mention. On 13th of December 1946, a note was circulated, and this note which was circulated was prepared by Benegal Narasimha Rao, and this note clearly indicated what should be and how it should be and the nature of our constitution, and this was unanimously accepted at a later stage by the Constituent Assembly. Thereafterwards, it helped everyone how to go about it, how to deal with it. That was the natural thing. Further, as a member, as a constitutional advisor in the Constituent Assembly, he had done yeoman service. Now, the first important thing is the setting up of a secretariat. When the secretariat was set up, there was a person by name Mukherjee. He was appointed as the joint secretary in the secretariat, and he had done yeoman service. Then, as a constitutional advisor, along with the joint secretary, both of them were able to set up an office. When they set up the office, Mr. Padmanabhan became the under secretary. Now, when I speak about the office of franchise, there was no electoral system in India, and the electoral system for the first time had to come to the state of India. For this, they established a franchise, office of franchise, and they had to prepare an electoral list, and it was a very tedious task. But then, under the leadership of B.N. Rao, the electoral list was prepared, and you might be knowing the electoral list which was prepared for the first time for independent India, composed of 17.3 millions. That means 17.3 crores of people, 173 millions, 17.3 crores of people. And this was the first list that was prepared by India. Thereafterwards, he wrote a letter to Pandit Nehru. Pandit Nehru was very much eager and interested to have the elections immediately. But then, the B.N. Rao advised him not to go very soon. First and foremost, the electoral list is prepared, should be prepared. When once the electoral list is prepared, you should have an election commission. And election commission should become the foundation of almost all the democratic values and principles of democracy. And thereafterwards, remember, the first election commission was appointed, and the role was very immense, which has played by it. Then we go further. When we go further, the B.N. Rao, soon after completing the task, was appointed as advisor to the United Nations by Pandit Nehru, and he was serving in New York. And when he served as a permanent representative of the state of India in New York, lots of developments have taken place, and he was elected as the member of the International Law Commission. International Law Commission is a world body. Today it is composed of 34 members, then it was composed of 25 members. And this world body, naturally, remember, is appointed to adopt conventions. The existing rules of customary rule of international law had to be transformed into conventional rules or treaty rules. That was the main job. And he was the one who was elected by the United Nations as a member of the International Law Commission. And when he completed his tenure, remember again, he was serving as the representative of the United Nations. From there, he was elevated as a judge of the International Court of Justice. As a representative from the state of India, he was elected as a judge, and he was the first Indian to be a judge before the International Court of Justice. Now, one or two things I just intend to speak to you. When the Constituent Assembly was appointed, the Constituent Assembly members authorized B.N. Rao, Padmanabhan, and a few others who were working in the Secretariat and other members to go to United States, in the state of Canada, the state of United Kingdom, and then the state of Ireland. And having gone there to consult eminent people, eminent personality from the public, eminent academicians in law, and eminent judges and lawyers as well. Now, having gone to the state of United States, he took an appointment with the Chief Justice of the state of United States. He had an appointment with the Justice Frankfurter, and one full session was given to him, and there was lots of discussion. And soon after the discussion, the President Frankfurter felt very happy. And later, the Chief Justice Frankfurter had told Mr. Bajpai, who was the Secretary to the Ministry of External Affairs of the Government of India, that if ever I am asked to nominate a judge to the Supreme Court of India by the President of the State of the United States, I will recommend Mr. B.N. Rao. That was the scholarship, that was the knowledge, that was the understanding of the different constitutions and constitutional interpretations which B.N. Rao had. Now, thereafter they came back and helped and assisted, and then remember, his life came to an end when he was still serving as a judge of the International Court of Justice in 1953. Now, we go to discuss something relating to what the Constitution is all about. When I speak about the Constitution, first and foremost, the attempt for giving some kind of legislature began in the year 1853 under the Charter Act. But then this was not what we call as a full-throated or a full generous attempt. It was a half-empty attempt made by the British. Now, in the year 1853, this was done under the Charter Act, which was followed in the year 1861 under different legislations. Then it was in the year 1892, they made an attempt to give some kind of relief, providing for representatives, etc., etc. But then these things were not up to the mark at all. Then comes the year, what we call as the year 1909. It was in the year 1909 the Minty-Morley reforms were adopted. Under the Minty-Morley reforms, for the first time, they provided the legislative councils. It's tried to increase the strength from 12 to a little more, but then it was incomplete. But when we come to the year 1919, the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms were adopted. Under the Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms Act, what we call as for the first time, they thought of establishing not only the Legislative Council and the Legislative Assembly, some kind of elections were provided. But then most of the people, the political representatives, were unhappy with this movement. Thereafterwards, you might be knowing the Quit India movement started, and several officials came to console the political leaders. But then the attempt was going on and on. Then we actually come to the Cripps Mission of 1942. Thereafter, the Cripps Mission, when it failed, when the Round Table Conferences failed, the British government thought of giving us the Constitution, then the proposal of 1946, then the appointment of what we call the Constituent Assembly, and the role of Pandit Nehru, the role of Dr. Ambedkar, the role of Alladi Krishnaswamy, and a host of other leaders. Now, the Constituent Assembly debates used to take place at the Parliament Hall and the Parliament venue for several areas. Now, thereafter, the Constitution was adopted on 26th January, and it came into force on 26th January 1950. It was adopted on this day, 26th November 1950. 49. Now when we speak about the Constitution starts with the stirring words, "We the people of India." Now when I speak about "we the people of India," simply meant the people of this country gave these constitutions to themselves. So we have given the Constitution to ourselves. We the people of India, that is the starting word which is mentioned under the Constitution of India. Then it says it is a sovereign government. It is a democratic government. It is a socialist government. It is a secular government. Now what do you mean by a democratic government? When I speak about a democratic government, naturally it represents democracy. All the institutions which are established under the Constitution of India functions basically under certain rules laid down under democracy. That is why it is democratic. When I speak about this, you take the institution of Parliament itself. Now the Parliament, remember, elections are held, and elections are held every 5 years. And elections, remember, it is a public election, a national election. To regulate the elections, you have the Election Commissioner of India. Now the Election Commissioner of India will be functioning under a charter or an act or a certain regulations, and these are to be implemented. That is why there is no nonsense in it. It is essentially on democratic principles. That is one aspect. Now you have the judiciary, the executive and the legislature. These are the three branches of government. And these branches of government, when they function, they have the independence. And remember, the laws that are to be enacted by the Parliament are to be enacted by itself. It cannot be done by any other body. That is where the supremacy of the Parliament is being recognized. Simultaneously, the executive is empowered to enforce, to carry out the legislations and function in an ordinary, reasonable manner. Now, that cannot be questioned by anybody unless they override their powers, trespass their powers, and exercise their powers in a whimsical way. Then you have the judiciary. Judiciary is empowered to question the legislations which are enacted, the ultra-virus provisions which are perpetrated by the executive or by the legislature. In case if it is done, this can be done. So when I speak about this, the preamble is the first and foremost is the foundation for any constitution. Anyone who reads the preamble to the Constitution comes to know what it is, for what purpose it is adopted, how, remember, the society is being governed. Then you have the institutions that are being spoken. When I speak about the other aspects, equality is the foundation of our Constitution. Simultaneously, social justice is recognized. When I speak about socialistic society, socialist society is the foundation of social justice that is being recognized in our Constitution. Simultaneously, when we speak of independence of judiciary, all laws which are enacted by a particular body, maybe the state legislature, maybe the legislation which is enacted, or the rules or orders which are enacted by a lower body or even by a higher body, are to be questioned by the judiciary. That is where the independence of the judiciary is being recognized. Independence of the legislature, as I mentioned to you, is recognized. Now, in addition to this, what I just wanted to speak to you is the most important power that is being given is the will of the people. Now, when I speak about sovereignty, we, the people of India, are sovereign. And we, the people of India, give the Constitution to ourselves. And the supremacy and the sovereignty naturally reside with the people of India. That is why the Constitution is supreme. We did not adopt and go for the American model. We did not adopt what we call as the model which is practiced in the state of Great Britain, where the crown is a permanent head without being elected to the concerned office. These are things which are, remember, just ignored by our people, and our people thought And having thought of it, having discussed it and deliberated on it, they said what we call as Prime Minister is the head of the legislature, that is the parliament, and the head of the executive is the president. And the office of the president, remember, he is elected to the office every 5 years when he completes to his independence. That is why in a republic, the concerned head of the republic as the executive head is an elected president. That should be known to everyone and every one of us. And simultaneously, when we speak about this, the will of the people, that is supreme. Now, when I speak about the will of the people, you have certain basic rights that are being enshrined under the Constitution. One is the right to equality. Then the equal opportunity, that is the foundation to social justice. And if it is not there, remember, in a society there will be a lot of problems. It may lead to revolutions as well. That is why social justice, equal opportunity is the foundation of social justice that is being recognized by our Constitution. Now, in addition to this, we have Part 3rd of the Constitution. Now, Part 3rd of the Constitution speaks about the basic fundamental rights. When I speak about the basic fundamental rights, you have plenty of them which are being recognized from Article 14 up to Article 32, 35 of the Constitution. We have the religious freedom as well. Now, freedom of thought, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, freedom to buy property. This was there earlier, even now you have. Now, these are certain basic things which are being spoken, and right to personal liberty, and right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution. Now, these are the things which are being spoken, because I don't wish to elaborate further. Only the things which are being indicated are just mentioned to him. Then we come to what we call as Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Chapter 4 of the Constitution is equally important. It is very much important because most of the matters relating to the commoners, in order to achieve the socialistic pattern of society, in order to realize the principle of equality in true terms, what we call as the directive principle, DPS, is being introduced into the Constitution of India. And it helps everyone to get his share. A lot of things are being said, and most of the writers also say both directive principles, state policy, as well as fundamental rights should be given equal importance. Now, for the first time, the constitution makers, the parliamentarians, not constitutional makers, the parliamentarians adopted an amendment. And this amendment is popularly called the 42nd Amendment. Under the 42nd Amendment, they adopted a chapter which is known as Chapter 4, 51A to the Constitution of India. Now, 51A, as adopted in 1976 under Part 4 of the Constitution, in the 42nd Amendment, composed of 10 fundamental duties. Now, they wanted to introduce this because even these duties naturally represent our culture, our ethos, our morality. Now, when we speak about our ethos, our culture and our morality, naturally certain duties are to be put under the Constitution for purpose of observance. Now, you might be knowing, great scholars have pointed out that rights and duties are reciprocal and they are correlative. Where there is a right, there is a duty. Where there is a duty, there is a right. Now, in such situations, the right and obligations, when they are right and duties, when they are correlative, they wanted to introduce the duty on each of the persons. For example, respecting the national flag, protecting the environment, and respecting the aged parents and age-old. Now, these are certain things which are being spoken there. Now, in the year 2002, under the 86th Amendment to the Constitution, they have added one more duty, that is the 11th duty which is being allotted. Now, along with the 10, one more is added. Now, there are 11 fundamental duties to the Constitution of India. Now, how these the duties came in? The Government of India in the year 1975-76 appointed a committee. And this committee was chaired by Sardar Swaran Singh, who was a brilliant politician, and he was the Minister for External Affairs of the Government of India. And this committee suggested that there shall be a chapter on fundamental duties, and hence came what we call as Article 51A to the Constitution of India. Now then we go to the other important aspects. Now when we speak about the other important aspects are the basic structure. Now in the Keshavananda Bharati versus state of Kerala, for the first time the basic structure of the constitution was defined. Now Parliament has the power, the elected representatives has the power to bring in the changes. But then these changes which they bring in must be within the provisions of the constitution, because everyone knows that the Parliament is the creator of the constitution. Similarly, the judiciary is the creator of the constitution. When the Parliament is created under the constitution, the body which is created is not supposed to violate the basic structure for which the constitution is being created. It becomes ultra vires. There were several instances that is being spoken. When I speak about these instances, the first issue that came up before the court of law in Keshavananda Bharati was the state of Kerala is, now basic structure you mean by what? And what exactly are the principles of basic structure? This was a question. No, it was at this juncture they pointed out, when we speak about the basic structure, first one is the constitution is adopted by the people, we the people of the country. Then it has say 3 or 4 pillars: sovereign, democratic, secular, republic. Now this has to be respected, you cannot go against it. Then independence of the judiciary, that is a pillar, a basic structure of the constitution. Parliamentary form of government, president as the chief of the executive. Now these are certain things which are basic structures. Now a question came up. Nani Palkiwala in one of his writings puts it this way. Now will of the people is supreme. Now if the will of the people is supreme, whether the parliament which is being composed of the elected representatives of India constitute the will of the people. Now he gives an instance relating to the declaration of emergency of 1975. And subsequent to the declaration of emergency done in 1975, they have repealed several laws. Now if Parliament represents completely the will of the people of India, remember, in just 2 years, in 1978 itself, when the elections were held, the party went out of power. And afterwards, remember the proclamation of emergency, everything was repealed, and even the 42nd Amendment to a certain extent were struck down. And you might be knowing, in one of the legislations, they had added Article 31C. And Article 31C, which was added to the Constitution of India, was struck down. They said they kept the institution of the judiciary out of judicial review. When they kept the judiciary out of the power of judicial review, naturally it was struck down, saying that it is against the basic structure of the Constitution. Now most important is, I wanted to speak to you, this is a day wherein we have to remember our Constitution, because we have given ourselves to us the Constitution of India. When we remember the Constitution of India, at least for those who are not aware of this, I intend to bring to your kind attention 1 or 2 important fact situations. Now, the first thing is, the Constitution was adopted, and when it was adopted, remember, it was not printed. Neither it was printed, nor, remember, it was typed. And it was handwritten. And when it was handwritten both in Hindi as well as English. And calligraphy was used for this purpose. Now, when I speak about this, Nandalal Bose, who was working in the Shantiniketan at Calcutta, was made use of for this purpose. When the constitution, remember when they used calligraphy, lot of paintings were brought into. And when the paintings were brought into, in the sense that they were by a miniature form. Now when I speak about the miniature form, these paintings were used in the 22 chapters of the Constitution. Our Constitution has 22 parts, and then it has 12 schedules and 395 articles. So in the 22 parts of the Constitution, they have used certain historical miniatures by way of, is brought in and put by way of painting and written, drawn there. Now these paintings, miniatures, naturally represent and speak of our civilization, which naturally speak about our civilization from the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilization. After the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, it speaks about our Vedic civilization. Then it speaks about the golden age of the Mauryas. Then it speaks about the golden age of the Guptas. Then it makes a mention through its paintings the history of the Mughals. Then it speaks about the freedom movement of the state of India. That is why when everyone browses through the constitutions, the original constitution, you get to know, you come to know, and you know what type of constitution it is. The entire history runs through it, because you see calligraphic painted pictures of this. Naturally, one can understand. They are all from our rich civilization and culture. Now this is how we celebrate. Now the reason for celebrating this is from 1979 to 2015, the Constitutional Day was celebrated, remember, in accordance with the Bar Council resolution. And remember, it was celebrated as a Law Day celebration. So 79 to 2015, it was celebrated as a Law Day because of a resolution which was passed by the Supreme Court Bar Association. In the year 2015, the Government of India, through the Ministry of Social Justice, issued a circular. And the circular indicated that from now on, because 2015 was the year of the birth centenary, 125th year of the birth of Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Balasaheb Ambedkar had completed 125th year in the year 2015. So to commemorate his memory, to remember the contribution which is being made by him in adopting a new constitution and the role that is being played as the chairman of the drafting committee of the constitution, they said from now on, every year on 26th November 1946 should be celebrated as the Constitution Day. And that is where we celebrate. And Constitution should remember. The last point which I just intend to point out is, we have adopted ourselves the Constitution. The Constitution has empowered us. On this day, we too, as the people of this country, empower the Constitution of India. Thank you.